Miami detectives Marcus Burnett and Mike Lowry.
Buenos días, mi amor.
It was the ultimate nightmare.
Tactical, discreet, displaying finesse and subtlety.
I want to talk about it right now. Well, see if they'll give us a timeout.
Look at you. Look at you. Can you stay focused?
What are you talking about? I'm focused.
Yeah, focus on all this scattered ass around here.
What are you, a cop or a model? Hey, don't hate the player, hate the game.
I hate to tell her. Let's try to do this right. No gunshots. No dead bodies.
Well, you know, if I recall correctly, the last couple dead bad guys belong to you.
Please, you ain't even trying to compare body counts.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare, from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on, and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise, and at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon,
You know you want to do it.
we decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover. Patreon subscribers also get an on-air shout-out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for just about a year now. There is almost 50 bonus episodes or so waiting for you. If you guys haven't made the jump yet, definitely consider doing that. And speaking of which, we did have a lot of people make the jump this week, so
Sweet.
We're going to shout those guys out now. We have Chad O'Neill, Jonathan Dick, Sean R. Moorhead. Sean, obviously, guest on the show.
Yeah.
He brought Kiyoshi Kurosawa with him. He did
nice.
Cure and Serpent's Path. So Sean finally made the jump this week. Thanks so much, Sean.
Those were great.
Fabius, H-Rock 95-ism.
All right.
Sounds all
Thank
right.
you.
And Daniel Salas.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
So thanks so much for
Really
making the jump
appreciate
this
you.
week. We appreciate the support and hope you guys are enjoying all those bonus episodes. Luckily, no one made me read anything crazy out this month.
Yeah.
What was the last one? Someone made me read out Impeach the Paw Patrol last week. So no one's messing with me this week. That's the one plug. The other plug for the week, Apple Podcasts, iTunes. I know you guys are listening on Apple Podcasts out there, and if you are, just scroll all the way to the bottom there, get to the show, and give us a good old rating and review over there. It helps us find new listeners and climb the ranks over there, so we appreciate that as well. But those are the plugs for the week. As always, I'm your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me,
Jamie Miller, welcome back.
my regular co-host, as some of you will obviously recognize. 2 weeks ago, I think, would have been the last time you guys would have heard from us, and we would have done our annual best genre movies of the year list. We did
Big
3
old episode.
hours counting down our top 10 genre movies of 2019. Hopefully you guys have listened to that. If not, though, again, any podcast listener of choice, it's out there. We had some big ones at the top there, and Jamie and I agreed on the number 1. I'm sure you guys know what it is, but just in case you don't, it's a surprise over there, so go take a listen. And for bonus listeners, know patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. The exclusive bonus episode last week was a John Woo double feature voted on by our patrons. It was their second highest voted double feature that they wanted us to talk about. So we did The Killer from 1989 as well as Hard Boiled from 1992, 2 action movies that are very close to my heart. I 5-starred both of them.
Yeah, and I'm on my way. I'm sure I will.
Yep. So if you haven't
Give it a
heard that
rewatch.
episode, that was last week's bonus episode. Again, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast if you want to hear that. But this week, branching off of John Woo and the art of excess and action poetry, we decided we wanted to take a little bit of a look in conjunction with the release of a new film in theaters at the American version of that.
Oh, yeah.
The grotesque American id at the center of one very famous, excessive action filmmaker I believe he is out of Los Angeles.
Of course.
We are talking about one Michael Bay, and in order to do that, we have brought on one of film Twitter's foremost Michael Bay experts, and also the host of the Waffle Press podcast, and that is Diego Crespo. Diego, how are you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me. Longtime Twitter pal with Josh, actually.
Yes, we've been on Twitter since like the 2013 days, I think. Film Twitter has grown and changed in that time period quite a bit.
It is definitely a lot of things now. I remember the simpler days, and it was like, I don't like Birdman or Man of Steel. Hey, I like those movies.
Yeah, that was all we talked about.
Yep. But simpler times. But yeah, thank you guys for having me on. I totally forgot to mention before the show too, but I also recently just did a Michael Bay podcast with the pals over at Talk Film Society called Bayhem.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. That's kind of like how I spent my free time last year.
Well, there you go. So you are researched for this episode then.
Oh, you guys have no idea.
Amazing. Okay, so as the show goes, we usually have the guests bring the double features with them, and we kind of knew we wanted to do this one anyway.
Yeah.
But we're going to have you introduce the two films we're talking about today. So what are we talking about, Diego?
We are talking about Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2.
Amazing.
The most American films ever made.
That's hard to argue, for sure.
Directed, obviously, by one Michael Bay. I don't even think we need a reason to pair these together. Usually we're like, why do these two double feature together? But there's no explanation. They are in the same franchise. They're by the same filmmaker. But I would say, very especially, though, it is the directorial debut of Michael Bay.
It's
the very
Bad
first
Boys
film he ever made.
Oh, wow.
The honing of that style. And then a couple years and a couple films later, you can see where that style has gone. This is a like experiment in the creation of Bayhem. Is what we're watching here.
Absolutely. Ground zero.
So, and because there is a new film coming out just this month called Bad Boys for Life, I think they called it. They kind of screwed up not waiting for the fourth one to call it that, though, right?
Yeah, you have
they
to
could have
the
done
four.
Bad Boys for Life,
That's,
right? Like
come
that
on.
feels like the.
You would have thought so, but I think they're kind of counting their eggs before they hatch. Because Sony was like one of those main studios that was like, we're teeing up sequels, and they're like, oh shit, none of our franchises are picking up steam. Oh no,
nobody.
So they just kind of like cut corners.
Amazing. Well, that being said, I think we're going to jump right into the first film here because we need to get it out of the way before we can get into
the masterpiece
Bad Boys 2, but definitely stick around for our discussion on Bad Boys 2 if not, because on this rewatch I felt like I saw God.
Yeah. Oh,
so we are going
to
we are going to talk about Bad Boys 2 very in depth, but before we do that, we are going to jump in first here. Chronologically, we are going to talk about the directorial debut of a little independent filmmaker known as Michael Bay.
The law will be served. Justice will be done.
You forgot your boarding pass.
Oh, shit. And boys will be boys. Bad boys. What you gonna do?
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
All right, we are talking Bad Boys, the 1995 American buddy cop action comedy film directed by Michael Bay. In what we've already said is his feature directorial debut, given to him by producers Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, who also famously started the careers of one Tony Scott. Back in his early 80s action days, Top Gun, Days of Thunder, things of this nature.
So what was Bay doing before this? Like, what gave
before
them...
this? This is a great place to start, actually, because I actually ended up looking a little bit up about Michael Bay. Because I was kind of like, how did Michael Bay get this gig? That was my question when I first watched the movie. I was like, they just pick a guy off the street. They were like, we have a screenplay. But as it turns out...
It just so happens to be, like, reptilian-brained.
Yes. So, as it kind of turns out, Michael Bay... We're going to go right to the beginning. We're going to psychoanalyze Michael Bay here. So, as a young child, Michael Bay...
I didn't expect this at all. Here we go.
Listen, you think it's a joke, but it's not.
I'm so pumped.
As a young boy, Michael Bay, and this is a true story, he attached some firecrackers to a toy train model set. and he filmed the ensuing fiery disaster with his mother's 8mm camera. The fire department was called and he was grounded. That is the beginning of Bayham.
That's amazing.
As he says it, he said, ever since then, I saw that amazing little toy train on fire exploding on an 8mm camera. He knew he wanted to be a filmmaker. So he spent a while interning in the movie industry. He interned for, among others, George Lucas. He actually worked in the storyboard department as a guy carrying the coffees and papers around for Raiders of the Lost Ark, which he apparently thought was going to be a terrible movie when he was looking at the storyboards. And then he was like, wow, filmmaking.
How about that?
From there, he became a music video and commercial director. He directed very famous commercials for Coca-Cola, and he even won a Clio Award for the very famous advertising campaign Got Milk.
Really?
Yes.
That's Bay?
Well, directing. I don't know that he wrote it. There was definitely some Don Draper types in there who came up with the one guy came up and was like, "Got milk," and then the Don Draper came up and put the little question mark, and they were like, "Holy fuck!" They all their minds exploded and.
But he directed that milk flowing.
Bay directed it, and he did win a Clio for the commercial that he directed doing that. And then that was what put him on the radar. His music videos, this very flashy commercial music video aesthetic that he had, very stylish, very oversaturated. It got the attention of Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, who previously had a lot of success making these really broad action movies and these kind of very, they did Top Gun 2, very masculine films in a lot of cases. So they had the screenplay floating around about these buddy cops, and they kind of had the film working, but they needed a young guy to come in and direct it, and they picked Michael Bay, and therefore Michael Bay exists.
Was born.
There you go. And you can see it happen in Bad Boys in real time because you can tell that he doesn't feel a lot for this screenplay.
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot that they've come up with here. It really just is. They're really spinning their wheels on the fact that Will Smith and Martin Lawrence have like some buddy charisma and some chemistry together. And
I'm assuming that coming from comedy, they're probably very good at improvisation.
And coming from TV, especially. Yeah. I mean, this is also the movie, to be fair, that also brought us Will Smith as a movie star.
Because this kind of broke
he was
him from the whole
he was
sitcom
Fresh Prince
thing.
at the time. He actually was still making Fresh Prince while doing this.
Yeah.
So this was like the birth of Will Smith, action movie star. As well. And to be fair, both of the actors I think are quite good in the film.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
But I will just say
they're what drive the first.
The basic premise where they were like, "Here's the family man cop. Here's the ladies man cop." Both of them kind of break the rules to solve the case.
Yeah,
it's very trailer voice shit. Like
for sure.
One cop drives like this. One cop drives like this, and watch them solve a case together. But Diego, maybe you could tell us about like your first time watching this film.
God, I don't even remember how old. Like, I feel like it's always been there in my life, you know? Like, it's just been sitting there because, you know, I'm Mexican, but I was born in America. And as an American, like, Michael Bay just is a thing. Like, whether or not everyone accepts it or understands it, like, that's like the voice of the American people in a lot of ways, for better and worse, I think. This is complete, like, honesty for me. There's no irony here. Maybe a little bit, but, like... Like that's what people think when they see like American films. I mean, now it's like Marvel shit, but like whatever.
Yeah.
But for a while, like the 90s, the Jerry Bruckheimer look and everything, like a lot of those films kind of like melded in my memory. Like I'm a big fan of The Last Boy Scout from the great late Tony Scott.
Yes.
And like I didn't realize I had seen that until I rewatched it a couple years ago because I just put those images in my mind from other Bruckheimer era films. And so for a while, it took me to like a while to disassociate from all that. Like, okay, like this one's that one, this one's this one. They all kind of look and operate the same, but they all have like their own peaks and valleys, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't really remember the first time I ever saw the first Bad Boys. I just remember the Bad Boys 2 making the big impression on me. Bad Boys is a fine film. It's a solid picture, and I don't think it's a great one or even like... a very good one, but it's a rock solid like debut, you know. I mean, for the budget it was shot for too.
Well, especially like to establish this kind of like Bay aesthetic, I guess, is interesting. Like, I actually didn't know that this was his very first feature length film.
Yep.
So now that I know that, and I'm
you can
thinking
kind of
on the
sense
movie,
that in the film. Like you can
cool.
sense him over the course of the film figuring out
himself
how
in a way
to shoot things, how he's going to shoot things.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
Stuff like that.
And that is pretty interesting to watch, especially to see, when we get to the second one, what it evolves into. Something else that doesn't really work for me as much as the second is the comedy in the first one, because a lot of it's funny because these guys have good timing and they're good at improvising, and it is funny to see them bicker at each other. But I found with the first one, it's there's no room to breathe ever. Like, they're just constantly fighting with each other, just lying back and forth. And I just found myself at a certain point to be very overwhelmed by it, and I couldn't really get any jokes that were coming out. I didn't find myself laughing a lot in the first Bad Boys, even though there were things I found funny. It's just it would move on to the next thing so fast that I just wasn't able to
Well, I would say
digest
the
it.
issue is that in the writing, like, this is credited to like 4 or 5 writers, I'm
Of
pretty
course.
sure,
Yeah.
because it was a screenplay that they were like passing around and the producers wanted to get made, and they had like a good pairing of casting that they wanted to use, and even Michael Bay on set, like, I wouldn't say necessarily like a god of writing or anything, but he was someone who was like, famously, he was like, I don't really understand the scene. Like, and he would basically just have them, like, watching this movie feels like they have the beginning of the scene and they have the end of the scene, like where the characters are going. And Michael Bay was like, say shit and get your way there.
Yeah, it does.
And there's moments where like you just feel like nothing is happening in this film. Like they're struggling to even like come up with what is supposed to be the story right now.
I found myself like, it's 2 hours long, and it just felt like it doesn't need to be that, because like you said, it's just there's a lot of this like detective filler that, quite honestly, it works better in the second one, like pretty much everything, but I just didn't find it that compelling when they were like figuring out the case.
We know Michael Bay is an action director now.
Yeah.
But they didn't know that yet. So when they made this, this isn't much of an action movie, really. Like, there's a couple chase scenes in it.
End of it, yeah.
And they clearly saved their money for the last climactic fight and explosion that they have near the end.
Absolutely.
So a lot of it is like this weird, like this premise where they're playing each other.
Yeah.
Which like has a little bit of comedy, but it would have more comedy to it, like if we kind of knew these characters a little bit better, but we really don't. Like, it's our first time being introduced to them. Yeah. They just throw you in, and the opening scene is just them riffing.
Yeah. And they're just talking about how like Martin Lawrence doesn't get laid, and and Will does.
Yeah, these movies have a very immature sense of humor. We'll say that much.
Yeah.
Oh god,
but
the first one
that's putting it lightly.
And in the second one, it crosses over from immature into like actively hateful sometimes, but in a way that the tone is still like jolly in that kind of way.
Yeah, which makes it funny.
Which again has whole other thing we'll have to get into. But what's interesting is that these are just they're cops. And they're boys, and they're bad. Like, that's they came up with the premise, and they were like, "All right, now riff your way through the rest of it." Like they argue about food. They do. I mean, he yells at the one guy like Popeye's chicken loving motherfucker at the one guy because he's a little bigger.
I also love that
they're joking about like diarrhea in the opening like 2 minutes of the film.
Every single interaction, it's not even necessarily between Will and Martin, is just yelling. Like every single thing, it's just improvised yelling at a very high speed.
Right. They're doing like boner jokes and your mama jokes.
It's so like odd, and like I totally get where it's coming from, because you mentioned that like it wasn't realized that Michael Bay was an action filmmaker yet. I don't think Michael Bay knew what kind of filmmaker he was yet.
No idea.
If you go look back at like his commercial work and his music video stuff, it's like there's occasional like striking images, but you have to like really watch all of them in succession, which I did for the Bayhem podcast, by the way. And you can see like, there's like the American flag imagery. Like there's the birth of that. There's the birth of like the low angle, like upward,
pan,
skirt shot and stuff like that. And like, it's just like a slow revelation of like, these are the Bay tropes like coming to light for the first time. Yeah. And then with Bad Boys, it's like, everyone was trying to do buddy cop movies in the 90s. And it's like, Lethal Weapon was great. And it's like, I agree. But like the first half of that movie is just dudes like talking and like dealing with their personal problems. it's not them opening the movie with them at each other's throats, pissing, like having a pissing contest for 2 hours. Like there's a gradual buildup of a relationship. And here,
and even in this one, it's established that we're supposed to have all this off-screen history, that they've been a partnership for a long time.
Yeah, because they talk about it all the time.
Yeah,
but you don't see anything.
No, we're just kind of dropped into it, and there's no actual arc for their relationship. It's just we bicker at each other, we give each other shit, but actually,
at the end of the day,
we love
partners.
each other, bro.
Yeah.
That's the big thing, which is so funny because I actually read that on set. Michael Bay couldn't get Will Smith to do the "I love you, man" bit at the end of the film, which is like so pivotal to the film.
Really?
Yeah. Will Smith was just like, I just don't want to do it. I don't know if he was like, it's not manly, bro. I don't want to do that.
I'm sure that's what it was.
But eventually,
I think this was like his whole thing. I think I've heard about this in an interview or something where this movie was supposed to be him breaking out of that like sitcom I'm a funny guy thing and trying to be a total
so he
badass.
thought that was like funny or something.
So I assume he's just like, I can't say I love you to a man. That'll just break the whole thing, you know. So that's pretty funny.
What was that one movie he did in the 90s? I've never seen it, but I know he kisses another man in that, and then he refused to do it for the scene, so they had to like get like really odd coverage and like add a sound effect in post.
Oh my god.
Come on.
So I guess that's a Will thing. I'm going to assume.
Yeah. And I mean, he's gone on record saying like, I wish I made that commitment when I was younger. But like,
so he kind of regrets it.
Yeah. That doesn't mean anything beyond that. But
he was trying.
I just think that's funny.
He was trying to be a bit macho.
I think that's probably what it was. That's funny. But it's pivotal to the whole thing.
Right.
That's
like if you don't have that ending where they go so over the top and they do so much destruction, but then they go, but it's about us, bro. Yeah, and like we care about each other. That's why we're going to these extremes in the first place.
And I mean, it's funny too because they even write it so that Will still has that kind of safety net of I'm still a man. Because even Martin goes like, "Oh, you're saying I love you" or whatever, and then Will comes back with like, "Yeah, shut up," you know, that whole thing. So it's not like he had like a real genuine sensitive moment that he had to do. But he still tosses it out the window. It's interesting.
Yep. But what you see during all of that, which again is it's a lot of Martin Lawrence and a lot of Will Smith just like bickering back and forth.
I will say, I think the captain is great.
And then they start playing each other to solve a case of the drug. The evidence room has been raided for drugs that they are selling, I guess, but we don't actually get a whole lot of view of the drug dealing aspect. That's mostly saved for the second one.
Yeah.
So really, again, it's just a lot of them doing good cop work, but they're loose cannons, but they get results kind of stuff, you know, like that's really all it is. And throughout, you get the birth of Michael Bay's sort of like nonsensically dynamic like shooting style, which is just like he doesn't put much thought into the reason or the meaning
it's like,
behind
show a
the
gun
shots.
shoot, show an explosion somewhere on the screen.
Right, but even just the choice of shots where he has like these lateral dollies and these like extreme angles and the saturation and the slow-mo. And obviously this would, you know, he would go on to hone this style into like genuinely what has just become a way that people process movies. I mean, like, even if he's frequently critically reviled, like his movies make money every time they come out.
Yeah.
Like large amounts of the public box office between, you know, starting in 2000 all the way until like, I mean, he only had to go to Netflix recently until like the mid 2010s.
I feel like
he did 15 years of pop filmmaking and action blockbuster filmmaking is defined by the Michael Bay style in a lot of ways.
He's become like his own franchise, like Marvel. Like I feel like people see Bay and they just know exactly what to expect.
Yeah.
So regardless of the fact that there's not a lot of depth to it a lot of the time, you know what you're paying for. And so and they're easy to watch. I mean, they are fun. They're ridiculous.
And I'm assuming both of you have probably seen a long time ago now, again, early film Twitter days. But when that YouTube channel was around, Every Frame a Painting, he did that Bayham episode of the show Diego. And I thought it was a really good introduction to anyone who doesn't really know exactly because a lot of people, when they talk about Bay, they talk about him in this sense of like, oh, he's kind of like an artless, crude guy who just kind of puts the camera down. But there's actually a lot of complexity that goes into what he does. And yes, it might not have much value
meaning
in terms of,
you
know, what he's thinking these images mean, the ideas he's trying to communicate.
Right.
But like, the actual style itself actually is expensive and complicated and takes a lot of people to actually put it together.
For sure.
And it involves, you know, using these extreme telephoto lenses and, you know, busying the frame with a lot of foreground information and background information and creating like this really big sense of like dynamic shots and just a sense of epicness almost.
Yeah.
And it's just funny is that he'll aim to capture that beautiful shots combined with like these edits that like really, really accentuate those shots, and he'll just do that style no matter the content of the film, basically.
Even if it's supposed to be a subtle scene,
which is why I find the first Bad Boys like exhausting in a way that maybe I find more negative, because again he's starting to develop this style. And there are a couple moments. I mean, this does have the big 360 lateral dolly shot, low angle, slow-mo spinning.
Yeah.
Like that's become like the Michael Bay hero shot kind of deal. This has that in there, and you're watching it and you're like, there's Bay.
Yeah, there's the Bay.
And that's and it's a moment where it works. But when he applies it to just two guys pointlessly riffing, you're kind of like, why am I watching this?
This is really stylized improvisation. Yeah.
Again, it's like
he knows how to make people like engaged. It might be like bullshit they're engaging with, but he knows how to draw you in. Like
exactly.
Like my big whole thing with Bay is that he's probably spouting a lot of bullshit a lot of the time, but I love it a lot of the time too. Like he's totally the Aaron Sorkin of like directing. I think that's my take. A controversial take of the day.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fast moving parts. Again, he takes a little bit from Tony Scott, who had a lot of that sort of like hyper masculine. That lot of frequently Tony Scott could get into the realm of like operatic. Like sometimes he could get into like these really emotional sequencing. Like Top Gun has a lot of heightened passion to it that Michael Bay likes to replicate and kind of steal from him. But again, Tony Scott always did that in tune with his character, and you can feel Michael Bay wrestling with the fact that they didn't really write much for their characters here, other than that these guys riff, and they're funny at riffing, but again, it doesn't take it to much places. But then he combines that with the excess of like John Woo, because this is around the time that
So you give Will Smith two guns.
Yes.
You have him dive in slow-mo.
I mean, this is when the John Woo, the Hong Kong action movie influence started to hit American audiences.
Right.
I mean, John Woo started making American action films in the mid-90s.
Right.
So, like, this is when this happened. So it's funny that Bay got big around the exact same time that this was a popular movement, what Americans were trying to replicate.
Yeah. Because, like, you even have one of my favorite
the smoke,
sequences.
the slow-mo, the lighting, the
one of my favorite sequences was when it shows... Will Smith is running towards something. He's trying to save somebody.
I think he's chasing an SUV, right?
Right, and every time that he shoots Will, it's in slow motion, but then it goes back to fast motion and then back to Will when he's in slow motion. It almost reminded me of like that Ferris Bueller scene at the end when he's going back and forth running through the backyards.
Yeah,
but that kind of thing was interesting. Those were the scenes that I was really engaging with the first Bad Boys. Was every time there was action, you could tell that that's what he had his passion behind.
Yes.
But yeah, I love that.
He also loves filming them in like their tight tank tops with the leather gun straps on.
Yeah.
And talking about, we got to get this case done, bro.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden they go to do the case and they're supposed to be like these great cops. And then they come across a dead body, and he's like, "Man, smells like farts in here, man." And he's like, and they're like,
and I love how Martin Lawrence has this thing about like dead bodies. Yet every scene in the action scenes, he's just shooting up like no tomorrow.
Yeah, he has a line that sounded like it was improvised, where he was like, "Dead bodies, dead ends."
But you know what? They fucking sell it. I don't know what it is.
No, they're so fun to
for
watch.
all of
They are a
those
good
like
combo.
legitimate criticisms. Like I think this goes for all of his films. Like even the genuinely like hard to watch films, like some of the later Transformers.
Yeah,
I don't think the actors are like wrong for Bay's material. They might be wrong for like the film, but you know what I mean. Like with Bay at the helm, they're operating like on his level all the time.
Yeah.
Like very rarely do you see an actor in a Bay film and you're like, what are they doing here? Like they're not playing to the strengths. No, everyone's just yelling and pissing and cursing, and
yeah, that's true.
They're all there,
That is the strength.
Yeah.
You can basically do anything and get away with it.
That or Bay sets them to the side and just gives the same motivation to every single actor. It's like,
yeah, and I mean, I don't even honestly. I watched this the other day. I don't even remember the basic story of this that much.
I just
think
know
it
that
has
Well, Tay Leone's in it.
Yeah, right. And I remember that she's a witness to the drug deal sort of gone wrong, where like one of the guys who stole the drugs from the evidence room is just like snorting it out of the evidence bag or something.
Yeah.
And they see like a murder go down, and then the witness will only talk to Mike Lowry, which they say like
'cause they're
50 million times this movie. It's so funny every single time. Mike Lowry. But at that moment in time, Will Smith is getting like he's investigating something else, so he's not available. So Martin Lawrence has to like do the sexy talk and pretend to be the Will Smith ladies' man talking to the witness.
Yeah,
And
I do
then-
like the scene where the captain's like, "Speak sexy. You're not talking sexy
Yeah,
enough."
you don't sound sexy enough, man.
He's got big Bill Burr energy, by the way. The
Oh,
captain,
yeah. No, he's
huge
Bill
Bill
great.
Burr.
And I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, shout out to Joey Pants.
Yes,
That-
Joey
He's great.
Pantoliano, I think.
Italiano. Yeah, I said
Yeah, I'd
Pants just to
say-
cover my own ass. You went for the name.
I went for it. I always
I think
try.
even in the first one, he's probably the best part to the comedy. Anyway.
See, I always think of him as Cypher in The Matrix, right? That's what he is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I
But yeah.
completely forgot about that.
So
Actually.
yeah, he's a lot of fun as the captain who just kind of yells a lot. I mean, he gets a lot of those really cheesy cliche lines where he's
Yeah.
just like, "The captain is up my ass about this.
Yeah, but he
You
delivers
guys are
it.
destroying property."
I love his constant high-pitched voice that he seems like he's about to pop in every scene, and I love it. His performance is fantastic.
No, he's a lot of fun to watch for sure. But then the weird thing happens where he goes to the witness, and Martin Lawrence is playing Will Smith, and he takes over Will Smith's apartment, and he's got to play being Will Smith to make the witness comfortable so that they can
Right.
take down the drug dealers.
Yeah.
But then when Will Smith comes back, they don't just like be like, "Sorry, girl, we lied to you. Here's him. Here's his cop badge. Here's his real identity. This is obviously him." Instead, they just continue the bit. So the rest of the movie is just a bit where
Yeah.
Martin Lawrence is like being like, "I'm a family man, but I got to pretend to be the ladies' man wooing the witness, but also I got to tell my wife I'm on like a work trip."
And what's interesting is the movie itself seems to focus way more on that whole thing than the actual like drug plot and
Yeah.
all that. Like I remember more myself just the times that they were, lying to the wife or lying to Julia or Julie.
Right, and it just becomes like a bit of an improv farce.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
like, here's these guys pretending, like trying to pass this like obviously false lie.
Yeah, I
off
did like
onto
the gag
witness.
where he has pictures of himself,
That
like Will, and then so Martin has to explain.
That's my partner.
A picture for every time you save my life. It's so good.
I
a
also
good
really
line.
like, because I mean, also they're funny actors, so some of it does work. I really
Yeah.
like the bit where he takes her to the apartment and he can't find the light switches, and he's like falling over on shit. He's like, "Why am I tripping on shit? This is my apartment. This is my place. This is Mike Lowry's place."
Yeah, there's some good scenes that actually do sell that. But I just can't believe how hard they focus on it. It really was like a lot of the film.
Well, honestly, I feel like that was Michael Bay extending those scenes, like
Yeah.
trying to make a movie out of this. Like
maybe
he was like,
he was hoping that more character would come out of it,
Yeah.
since he didn't like set up character at the beginning at all. He just kind of threw us into it. So I thought maybe he's thinking like this will flesh them out a bit more or something.
Well, that's Michael Bay's thing. He's like, movies, but more. Like, here's this one thing people tend to like. I'm going to do more of it all the time.
yeah, and I would just say, unfortunately, Michael Bay, maybe not necessarily a great director of comedy. Like, maybe it's a great idea
Yeah.
that he didn't get a career in studio comedy,
For sure.
where like he directed Will Ferrell
yeah.
movies or something.
'Cause he tried to do that a little bit with like Pain and Gain, right? A little more anyway. That's his movie.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Pain and Gain.
Yep.
Because that one's a little more lighthearted, even though it probably should.
Well, no,
be,
that
given
one's
the
also pretty
context.
repulsive with the
Oh, yeah.
with them doing the heist murder shit and stuff that they do in that
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
That one's definitely closer to his Bad Boys 2 realm, but definitely
Yeah.
not like Six Underground, which is like
That's true. There's more intentional
it's more action
comedy.
heavy. Like
Yeah.
Pain and Gain is again trying to be a little bit more character based in that way. And again,
sure.
Michael Bay just not the best director of character, I feel like. But
I would agree.
also there's a weird bit of development where Will Smith is rich and doesn't need the money.
Yeah, he's like a trust fund baby or something.
Yeah. And so he's
I'm so glad you brought
Got it
this
from
up
Uncle
because
Phil.
this is very important
Yeah,
for
he-
Bad Boys 2.
he's just
Yeah.
he's just a cop because he likes doing action. He likes doing violence and shit.
Well,
Like that's the idea.
I think Julie is the one that's just like, so why do you do this? Are
Yeah.
you just like some like you just love the high thrills or what the hell? Which is interesting that a character actually does question him based on that. They don't dive any deeper, but
Well, no, because Michael Bay is the same kind of person, right? Like it's like
he's like, of course he does this. Wouldn't
Michael
you?
Bay really only comes alive during the action, which is why Bad Boys 2, which is just pedal to the metal action, almost start to like front to back, is like maybe more truthful and indicative of him. But I do think that around the time that we pivot kind of like into the third act of this film, when they start kind of climaxing the drug dealer plot with the witness and with the detective and this like weird farcical like couples comedy like the things that they're doing, that he does get to start experimenting with the action, like when they go into the club and they do like the club fight in there, and there's a part where Martin Lawrence, I think, goes to the urinal, and I was sitting here watching this and I was like, only Michael Bay would film this way. It's a high angle shot of like this neon lit club, and the detail of the scene is that you can see into the urinal and like the shit on the floor and like this is like the only detail that like this is what Michael Bay cares about when he's thinking about his frame.
Yeah,
he's just like, okay, so you're going into this urinal and you're gonna fight this guy, so I'm gonna film it. I'm gonna come down from the top because that's a dynamic angle in which to view your two bodies, but also we need to spice this frame up. We got to put some shit on the floor. We got to put some piss in that urinal. We got to put some gunk on that wall.
So gross.
Yeah, like
and
this is Michael Bay. This is where he lives.
It's like he made it the grossest pee.
This is just
and has a guy's face.
This
get
is just
smashed
his
into it.
humor. And then I think at one point he shoves his face into it. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like
That's the one that stuck with me.
Me too. Me too.
Just the grotesquerie of it, and the way that it's somehow meant to mirror their riffing on friendship. Like this is supposed to be their sense of humor at the same time. Like this is the personality and the friendship that he's developing, is that Martin Lawrence shoves a dude's face into piss.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just like an accurate allegory for like Michael Bay in general. I would just like to like screen cap it and put like Michael Bay over Martin Lawrence's body and like me over top of the guy's body whose face is being shoved in. This is what he's doing to us.
Well, the duology of Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2 is ultimately about Will Smith making Martin Lawrence a worse version of himself.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what they're about, you know? Like they're literally switching positions in the first Bad Boys. And Bad Boys 2, he's like teasing him the entire time, like, why don't you kill more people and shit? And, like, look
why
at
don't you drive more recklessly? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And this is just like the beginnings of that. Him having to like
that's interesting.
deal with like a dude fighting in a bathroom while he's getting like striptease on the other side of the glass.
I think this is actually like an important, like this might be the theme of these two films, is literally a corrupting force. Is that Will Smith, you know, in a way he's fun, he's likable, but at the same time he is actually corrupting Martin Lawrence's characters, and we're on a ride of grotesquerie.
Honestly,
as we
you do
go
get
on.
this idea that Martin would just want to be at a fucking office desk, just like going home to his wife, and there it is. And then just as Will pushes him, he just goes further and further down the rabbit hole to the point where he becomes the sports car driver and shoots the bad guy. And don't correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't he do this twice? He does it in both films where he's the one that ends up killing the final guy.
No, Martin Lawrence does it in the second one.
Oh,
yeah,
Will does it in the right.
Will does it in this
one,
one, which is a great moment though, actually. Near the end, because other than these,
because they almost try to have a character moment with Will where he's like, he's not going to shoot him, you know, like he's going to be restrained and not do it, and then of course the movie's like, well, we have to have the guy bring out a gun so that Will can shoot him in the face.
Yeah, well, that's what's so funny. I think that defines Michael Bay more than anything, because there's a couple set pieces in here that like kind of work. Like they have that freeway chase where they like blow up the one car, and they talk about how they blew up the only lead that they had on the case. Yeah. They're like, great. They do that like by so Bad Boys, they mean they're actually kind of bad at their jobs.
Yeah, for real.
They just like to
they're bad at their
shit.
jobs, and they're bad people.
Yeah. But yeah, when they get to around the time that you have Will Smith shirtless chasing down an SUV in slow motion, like jumping on top of cars, running through like a model shoot, all sweaty in slow-mo. He's diving and rolling. There's like spinning dollies on the telephoto lens as the car gets away. And you can sense in that moment, like Michael Bay was like actually like born right there. And it leads to a climax at an airport where they just blow more shit up. Yeah. That's their solution to everything, is to just blow shit up. The
movie's mostly been saving it for this too.
Yeah,
seems,
because you can tell they saved all their money for this.
Especially.
And Michael Bay really gets into those images, like the images of the money on fire as it explodes like out of the plane, the bodies like flying around. I was reminded a little bit of Hard Boiled in that one seat in the one scene in the warehouse where the bodies are flying everywhere, and at the end of that you can see like there's bodies like hanging in the rafters and shit that John put there, and you don't even like see them ever land there. You just know that was the consequences of that. This is where Michael Bay gets into that zone where he gets into the plane exploding and launching dudes everywhere. Meanwhile, they're shouting like, "You forgot your boarding pass, bro." But
I just want to say that's a great line.
Yeah.
Is it built up at all? Is it like super like memorable? No, but I like it.
Damn right.
But that's when they drive the car on the runway and they replicate that shot. There's multiple shots in the film that set this shot up, but it's like there's a shot of them driving the car and they're coming towards the camera. Yeah. And they're in other shots, there's like a plane in the background and a boat in the background, always like moving in the back of the frames. Just again, bring life to the image. Yeah. And then in this one, it's the big explosion in the background as they like peel out in the little tiny like red car that they're in. And so you can tell they saved their budget for this sequence. But then you get like Will Smith like framed against the sun and like the camera spinning over the bad guy's head as they like surround him, and then the shots of like 60 cop cars and like 4 helicopters like framed against the sunset like it's like Apocalypse Now or some shit. and the thing is the plot, it doesn't feel that big. Like the villain isn't like this really big epic villain that we're finally getting this cathartic relief. It's just weird. Like the story isn't quite there, but the images are there. It's this weird disconnect where like Michael Bay has actually really directed the shit out of this finale. And especially when like Martin Lawrence like stops him and he's like, "No, don't kill him. Don't do it, man. We're good cops. Yeah. We're good boys, man."
We're good boys.
And then you get this like really extreme close up of like the light hitting the guy, him pulling his gun out in slow motion.
Doesn't he see it in like the reflection of his sunglasses?
Something like that.
Like there's like a glint of light and stuff like that. Like it's the best part of the movie. It's like really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because Will Smith turns around and fucking blows him away like 10 shots in the chest.
Oh yeah, that's the thing.
Him on
it's
the
like,
ground.
That was my favorite part, was that he wasn't just like headshot or chest head, whatever. He like unloads the whole clip into the guy. He was definitely waiting for that moment.
100.
That's the beauty of Mike Lowry. Like everyone makes fun of like Optimus Prime in the Transformers movies because he too is a bloodthirsty psychopath.
Yeah,
but you know, he's like an invader from outer space. Like you get that. Like that makes sense. I buy that. Mike Lowry's like a trust fund baby who's a cop because he likes to kill people. Yeah, you know.
What a
like
character.
That's horrifying.
That's unreal.
By the way, since you mentioned Optimus Prime, I got to say my favorite Transformers movie is that, I think it's the third one, Dark of the Moon, the one where
isn't that like the least favorite too of most people?
But that's the one that has the most. It was the one where he first developed the idea of that all the Transformers were going to be filled with red fuel, so that when you dismember them, they like bleed out like fucking like an anime or something.
That's good stuff.
And that's also the one that ends with, I kid you not, Optimus Prime heroically executing an unarmed villain, where the guy goes, right. "Optimus, no!" He begging for mercy, and Optimus shoots him, and it is a shot where, like in a R-rated Michael Bay movie, the splatter from the bullet would like hit the camera, like
but
that's the
angle.
It's
the red oil, and it's like
pops out of his head, and then Optimus Prime looks up at the stars and goes, We made it through another day.
I am Optimus Prime.
Oh, it's terrific. Yeah, that's the best one.
I gotta rewatch that shit. Yeah. Jesus Christ, that's hilarious.
And that's also one that has the big Chicago set piece where they actually got locations for it, and
is that the one with the dinosaurs? Or
No, I
that's
think
the fourth one.
I think that's the fourth one.
They go
yeah.
dinosaurs
That's
with
the
the fourth
fourth one.
Gotcha.
But
They
still,
bring him into the last 5 minutes. That one's genuinely rough.
that is. But again, this is the beginning of that. Is Will Smith, this really awesome sitcom TV actor, turning around and just massacring a dude in the chest, one after the other, and then being like turning to his buddy and being like, you know what, man. I fucking love you. We bonded over this.
Yeah.
There's a dead body in between.
So in that scene is the birth of Michael Bay.
Yeah, 100%. That's where he figured himself out.
Yes.
In those final 15 minutes.
Now, I wish it didn't take 1 hour and 30 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
So maybe pivoting towards the reductive rating round, which for you, Diego, I know you've listened to the show before, but this is where we remove all the words, all the nuance. We reduce the movie between a number between like 1 and 5, but it's also turned into like final statements and
or anything you forgot to
any
mention.
scene or line we didn't get to that you wanted to bring up before we move on. This is the place to do it. But honestly, I feel bad, and I will say it's going to get the high 2 from me, but it is in the 2 realm because I've watched it a couple times, and every time I watch it, it really is hard to get through that first hour and a half for me.
I'm with you. Yeah.
And again, it's not the fault of Will Smith. It's not the fault of Lawrence. It's not even really the fault of Bay. It really just feels like they did not develop a very interesting screenplay, and they relied on this young, visually interesting talent, and these 2 funny actors to carry an entire movie.
And the thing
and
is,
they do
like,
their best.
They do,
and that's what's getting it to the 2.
Right. That's it. And it's a very high 2. Like I'm almost
for me too.
For me, it used to be a 3, honestly, but it's
close each time for me. But I really do feel like in terms of character, in terms of like actual enjoyment, it takes a really long time for this to get going for me, even if there's an occasional like riff or line that do work for me. Like is
like
this
the Skittles line?
This is the one that has the freeze bitch, and he's like, you freeze bitch, and then he's like, and give me a pack of tropical fruit bubblicious
and some Skittles.
Right.
Yeah,
and that is
great.
They've said that 100%, they've confirmed that was totally improvised, just like
really.
Yep.
That's a great
not
joke.
even in the screenplay. Like again,
it's probably
a lot
my favorite
of the comedy's
joke of the
not
movie.
even in the screenplay. So I just think it's like a really bad screenplay.
Yeah,
I don't
and
really
they
know.
just fleshed it out as much
Again,
as they could.
it's every buddy cop trope that you've seen in a movie before, and that we've seen, written by people like Shane Black, who have like a really cutting sense of humor and also develop their characters in ways that is like sometimes emotionally clear. This just has really, honestly, it's got none of that.
Yeah.
It really feels like they were like, okay, we got a drug dealer, we got a farcical mix-up identity drama situation happening here. Now riff your way through it.
Yeah, and then we'll have some decent action.
And we'll have some action near the end once you guys, do the meat and potatoes and you get through the riffing.
Yeah. I just can't believe like how close it is to the 3 for me. Yeah. It really is. It's like I almost feel like at one point if I watched it in another mood, I could get there. It's just
I feel like it's because we can see the better Bay movies coming down the line.
Yeah, and also after watching, Bad Boys 2, which we're about to talk about, it's just so like it's solidified to me that one has everything that I wanted the first one to be, really. Mm-hmm. So, for now, I'm gonna give it a high 2, but yeah.
For you, Diego,
I'll give it the 3. This is gonna be a weird comparison, and I want everyone to just take a step back. Don't let me finish. No one.
Let me finish.
Okay, this is it reminds me a lot of like my reaction to the original Star Wars: A New Hope. Hold on, where it's like this is the birth of something that is going to be a part of like pop culture and media forever at this point. Like it has made its stamp. It's not perfect. It's a little rough around the edges. It's kind of a miracle that it's even watchable if you look at like the production of it.
Yeah.
It loses its own plot quite a bit, but like you can see the birth of something exciting here. Now, here's the part where I say, obviously, the first Star Wars is like, fucking leagues ahead of the original bad. Like, no shit, that's one of the best movies ever made. But the same feeling is just more minuscule here. I'm seeing the birth of Bay, and that's too exciting for me to like ever give less than like a solid 3.
Yeah, no, I totally
even in like the era of the 90s, even knowing that Bay has like some genuine like master strokes in his future ahead. I feel comfortable with the solid 3.
Yeah, I totally get that reasoning too. Like, it almost makes me wanna 3 it, because it is interesting to see like the birth of someone so so well known as Michael Bay with such a reputation.
Like, love him or hate him, like influential.
Oh, 100%.
He defined a lot of the look. I mean, you can also say that. I mean, obviously, he's pulling a lot of his inspirations from other action filmmakers as well. So
For sure.
we can't give it all to Bay, but like.
Oh yeah, especially like Tony Scott or something.
Yeah, he definitely made it blockbuster popular. Like Tony Scott, as popular of a filmmaker as he was, I can't imagine a world where Tony Scott directed Transformers movies and made billions of dollars.
No, yeah.
Like, by the time he hit the mid 2000s, he was doing movies I think that are way better, like Deja Vu and even like Man on Fire and stuff. Like, he was developing his style in a really interesting way, and I think more meaningful and more artistic. But there is something to be said about how Bay took those inspirations and made them literally the biggest thing on the planet for basically a decade.
Yeah.
And still overseas, those are still really popular films. I mean, even the Transformers movies still are having trouble not breaking $1 billion, despite the fact that really nobody seems to like them that much.
Yeah, it's crazy.
This style is just incredibly watchable for people, and it is a pretty intoxicating blend of what Tony Scott was doing, a lot of the buddy cop crime stuff that came up about in the 80s, a little bit of John Woo, and eventually he would even take some Man inspirations, which we will see especially in Bad Boys 2, which he straight up does some Miami Vice shit in that one.
Yeah.
So, and again, Woo pulled a little bit from Man too. So it's just like a lot of these directors are in conversation with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely is worth seeing the origins of Bayham.
Yeah, 100%.
But that being said, I think that will wrap it up for Bad Boys, and we are going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about the big one, Bad Boys 2.
What you gonna do?
Yeah.
Police, stop! Pull up! Stop the car! Your badge! Man, he got a gun! Shoot him! Now show him your badge!
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when we come for you? It's next to this next Miss Nose, hey.
Dude, you gotta learn the words.
We usually only do the chorus.
All right, we are back, and we are talking Bad Boys 2, the 2003 American action comedy film. Comedic, yes. Very bleakly comedic, I would say, even more so. Film directed by Michael Bay, once again produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, and starring Martin Lawrence and Will Smith as Marcus Burnett and Mike Lowry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the escapades these trash-talking, loose cannon cops get into, the shenanigans of these two Miami narcotics task force guys who, in this film, are once again taking on the drugs in Miami. So very Miami Vice this time around, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
It's got a little bit of the undercover work. It's got a little bit of the speedboats in the Miami waters. It's got the drug kingpins sipping martinis with the ladies.
He ends up, though, switching the kind of moody thing that we see a lot, where he just goes straight techno with it at the very beginning. Like, this is like... I just like that it's kind of an artificial sound as well,
Right.
Something made by...
Yeah, because the opening credits is them making the ecstasy, right?
Right, yeah.
And immediately putting those ecstasies into corpses inside of coffins. So it opens on dead bodies stuffed with ecstasy, neon colors, again, the extreme color grading and oversaturation, the angles, the slow-mo, the grotesque textures of like rotting skin and plastic product, all of this stuff that Michael Bay vaguely established in Bad Boys is here, but having now filmed, I want to say this would have been his 5th or 6th film. I think in between this, correct me if I'm wrong here, he did The Rock, he did Armageddon, and then I think he also did Pearl Harbor, and then he did this, I think. So by now, between The Rock and Armageddon and Pearl Harbor, he has really established his style, and especially with Pearl Harbor, we will say that
not the most sensitive portrayal.
A very specific brand of patriotism has made its way into Michael Bay, but I would say it's that kind of like Pabst patriotism, if that makes sense. It's that kind of like, Americans, we get the job done, but he doesn't flinch away from like
all the destruction
and the grotesquerie of it. Like this is like an odyssey of a film. I mean, we are talking about a film literally that opens with ecstasy inside coffins, all the way to kind of like this very spooky foreigner drug dealer. I guess he's Cuban, who
and he always looks like he's just unhinged, like completely just shot a line. You know, like he always looks like he's wired. I love his performance in this.
Right, and it's also worth mentioning too that this is a film very much activated by like a post 9/11 kind of anxiety. I mean, this is the beginning of the War on Terror. There's a lot of like rage and xenophobia happening here, and on top of that, the film opens.
With the Klan?
Yes, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence undercover as Klansmen.
Yeah.
And again, like we're talking about real world things. We're talking about white supremacy here. We're talking about war on terror stuff. Like Michael Bay has been politicized by, I think, making the Pearl Harbor film and a little bit of Armageddon, which had a little bit of like the Americans got to get there and solve the problem. And like, so and I mean, obviously making those films too, he has a close relationship with military institutions and stuff. Like he works a lot with like real Navy SEALs. He works a lot of the time. So a lot of the time they've called him a bit of a propagandist because he just works so closely with them. Like they're like, we'll give you all this really cool stuff if you make sure the depictions are good.
Yeah.
But what's funny is that he almost, what people thought was good in like the mid 2000s in the George Bush era was really extreme, is what we'll say.
Yeah.
And funneling that through like his commercial and music video aesthetic that he has, this really plastic product, as well as the action, excess, and poetry of John Woo, doing all of that at the same time, and then also introducing like real world political aspects that he's doing to such a heightened degree that they're cartoony but still repulsive, is absolutely insane in this movie. And when that shot of Will Smith throwing off the Klan's robe, he's dual wielding the pistols, and it's a low angle, slow-mo shot of the Klan's robe falling off of this black man.
Yeah.
Framed at a low angle so you can see the giant burning cross behind him.
Yeah.
Like he's in a fucking music video or some shit.
And I think one of the best parts is all before this, they're chanting white power, and then when he pops it out, he goes, "Blue power, motherfucker!" The power of the state.
Is unbelievable.
Which, given the climate in 2019 where everyone's like, hey,
cops.
Maybe don't say blue lives matter. Having a black police officer say it is even more conflicting in front of the burning cross surrounded by Klansmen. It's like,
so he's
what are you even supposed to feel from that?
Yeah, exactly.
So this is once again a thing again. Michael Bay, again, not a great communicator of ideas, or, maybe he has some questionable ideas that he is communicating, but the images are so intoxicating and so insane that someone came up with that. You almost just have to respect that he thought to do that.
Absolutely.
And he thought to do it in a way that it actually is kind of beautiful to look at.
Yeah, because I think Michael Bay just has that very like simplistic view. It's just cops good, Klan bad.
Yes.
Therefore, blue power doesn't necessarily mean like
exactly.
He's just such a simplistic.
He definitely hasn't thought any of that. Any of these images through.
Yeah, he's not thinking about like systems.
So he's definitely irresponsibly using certain images. But I love it too. What I find so interesting about it is that it is like how a broad amount of people think about certain issues like that. Not everyone's well read on this stuff. Not everyone. Like you watch that and you're like, this is a hero shot of the guy shooting the Klans people who say that he's bad. Of course, this is just a good thing. It checks
off these like superficial things in your brain where you're just like.
And the way that he's filmed it, though, I think is what really just sends it over the top. Again, taking these like, these real world political ideas and this rage and this grotesquerie and just communicating it through like commercials of music videos and like that kind of visual vocabulary is just so insane to me. And the way that he again also applies it here in what actually I do feel like is an Odyssey structure.
Yeah.
Through like the Miami Vice world. Like he's got the speedboats, he's got the undercover cops in the drug game. Just instead of the sensitivity or the spirituality or like, I mean, man also has a little bit of that like existentialism to him.
Yeah.
He sees it all as a way to developing his like bro-y American kind of like attitudes that he has about how we are an exceptional group of people, and like he just thoroughly believes in that Americana, like this like this kind of like image of that. And I gotta say, like watching Michael Shannon, by the way, in an early role
as the Klan guy,
like just like yelling about like, what about our rights? And Will Smith just being like, I'm gonna splatter your shit all up and down this swamp or whatever.
Well, no, he tells him something about your rights to shut the fuck up, and I cheered.
Yeah.
Cheer every time.
It's so funny. And they're like rolling around and firing. There's like exploding Klan members everywhere. There's like a slow-mo bullet time shot through the moonshine.
See, and this is
into
where,
his neck.
Once this started happening, this is where I knew also that like Michael Bay kind of found his thing. There's nothing like that in the first Bad Boys, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like and he has plenty of amazing action shots in this movie, and that is just the start of it. Where it's like, as soon as I saw that, I went, okay, he's found his groove. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's so much more interesting. Every bit of this film, he's just he's just captured what he wants to do, basically.
No, and immediately too, they meet up after they take the Klan down. They meet up with the other two cops. And the other two cops are two, I think they're Latino cops, and
they're Cuban. They're Cuban.
They're Cuban. Okay,
which is a plot point that comes back later. It's not
very important.
It's not important.
But immediately they're making gay jokes and racist jokes at each other.
Yeah.
That's like how they communicate with each other entirely, and. Cutting, and again, this is the first like 5 to 10 minutes of the film. So we've gone from the ecstasy in the bodies to the Klansmen to the racist and gay jokes that they're making to immediately the camera doing a low angle upskirt through a crowd of club dancers.
Through the club, yeah,
that moves in a single shot all the way into the shot of the sweaty, like greasy, like the Russian
owner.
pimp, Peter Stormare, by the way, who we talked about before. Great actor.
Fucking terrific character actor.
Yeah, and he's counting his dollars, and then it flips around. The camera flips around and looks down at his money, and then zooms into the ecstasy, which has a naked girl imprinted on the ecstasy. All in one shot. And
it's insane.
And I'm like, this guy is like an actual madman.
Yeah. Like it's absolutely incredible to watch.
It's a pure expression of the American ID. Like honestly, especially right after 9/11, it's America reestablishing itself. And I do not think Michael Bay meant to do any of this. I just think he expressed this. You know, everyone's angry about like, oh, we got to get back at the terrorists, and it's like, whoa. Let's talk about there's more to talk about than just that. 9/11 and the war in Iraq were obviously a huge disaster, and we're still suffering like very real repercussions of that. Yeah. Especially at the time of recording this. Maybe a little stressful to think about. So I wanted to go back talking about Bad Boys 2. But it's America like reaffirming its like masculinity. It's like we're the best, and the foreigners are coming into the country and they're causing all the problems. The police are right. We're gonna establish that we're going to kill the bad Americans, the KKK, which is actually, okay, that's the one.
Yeah, we got that. Spot on.
Yeah, that's a good way to open this. But everything is just about like reaffirming how colorful and beautiful the American people are, and how wrong and evil everyone else is, and how they need to die.
Well, this movie, bar none, I think this might be. Hold on one second. I'm gonna wait for this to pass. But I was going to say more than anything too, because you were talking especially about like a lot of the death and destruction of this. This is the main aspect to this that really flabbergasted me in comparison to the first Bad Boys.
Yeah.
Because there's a body count on that first Bad Boys, but there is a body count.
Oh yeah.
Capital B, capital C on
tons
on this one.
At least 10 times more.
and it is like the way that he shoots it, like bodies are crunching, they're getting squished. There's more. I feel like there was more like actual like gore in this one too, by like a lot.
Oh yeah, holy shit, yeah.
And there's an insane car chase that happens in the first like 20 minutes of this movie. I realized in the first like half hour that I was like in love with this movie basically.
Yeah.
Because the car chase that they do, where Michael Bay basically does, again, there's nothing realistic about this style, but there's something so still cartoony about the way that he frames his action and his ideas in this way. But there's like a literal like Blues Brothers pile up, but with like expensive sports cars that happen in this film, where like in the Blues Brothers scene, it's all the cops just keep hitting each other and launching off each other. In this one, he does it, but it's meant to be a realistic action scene because he thinks that he grounds it in sort of like, you know, occasionally like real physics and like real weapons, and he's a bit of a tech fetishist in the way that he gets like the real military grade weapons and he gets all of this. But when they do that sports car pile up of all these bad guys and everyone gets out of their cars and just starts firing machine guns into like crowds of people.
Yeah, just on the highway.
And he's emphasizing the destruction of all of the cars and the infrastructure and the material and all of the things that they are basically blowing up. He's basically ripping off the Heat shootout.
Yeah, a little bit.
Where they do the heist and they're like taking the M16s at each other, but there's lots of shots in that where Mann is like really emphasizing the destruction and like watching all the glass break, watching the steel pierce it. And Bay is doing that,
but he's also just like, isn't this fucking incredible?
Yes, that's just it. Is he's not doing it with a sensitivity, with a mourning, with a sense that this destruction is bad. Yeah. It is bad. It is objectively bad. We're watching it, and I think on a certain level, you register that like this destruction is a bad thing, but the tone is not there for that.
And what's weird is that he knows he has to kind of mention it. I mean, I guess he didn't write it, but the scene after is the captain like chewing them out for all the destructive thing. He's like, "How did you total 46 cars and a boat?"
Yeah,
you know,
and you got like, nothing.
Right? Yeah, and you got nothing out of it, but just more deaths.
And he was like, "Well, technically, we didn't sink the boat."
Right. So once again, they bring up the whole thing that we're talking about, but then they just undercut it with another joke and then move on from there. And I find that funny that he still has like a glimpse of seeing it, but then he's like, "No, that's not fun though."
Because he's also always against the bureaucracy, like the guys who work in the offices.
Right.
He's like the real men don't work in the offices.
Right. Like the director that comes in to like tell the captain they're off the case and all that stuff. You know. She's kind of painted as the bad guy.
Those are always villains in Michael Bay movies. The guys who sit behind office desks and the pencil pushers of the who hold back the real men from getting the dirty work
job
done.
Yeah,
you know, that kind of thing. That's always an aspect of his movie, and it's so clear because he just so stylistically fetishizes like the action in that way, like the POV shots of like these cool dudes with muscles like firing the rifles into the crowded streets, and like the garish like overactive shooting style he has. And I think here too, like the colors and the textures of like the 35 millimeter and stuff like looks really, really awesome. This was one thing I was excited to revisit after 6 Underground because that has such a digital plastic look to it.
It does,
that I kind of wanted to go back and see Bay like before he could do some of that stuff. And I think there's a little bit of CG explosion accentuation and stuff happening, but he does love to do practical effects. And the physical stunts in this are really insane. Like that one guy who falls from the top of like the parking place that they're at when that car chase starts.
Yeah.
And he like falls down the staircase or whatever and like smashes on it or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, how did Michael Bay like not kill people?
I know.
How close these cameras are to some of these explosions, and like when those when the cars and the boat even are like on the highway and they're like trying to like swerve out of the way. And 3 cars, I'm pretty sure, drive into that boat and then it explodes on the middle of the highway.
And they note that no officers were killed. And I'm like, okay, like, no.
Which is odd because I'm pretty sure that Bay like focuses on at least 2 cop cars that blatantly blow up.
Oh, if you pay attention, the last cop car to like roll into it, it doesn't crash into anything. It just rolls into it. It's beautiful. But my favorite is actually when one of the cars, it's like one of the last cars, starts flipping towards Martin Lawrence and Will Smith's vehicle. And he's like, "Oh, shit." and Martin Lawrence has his head out the window looking up as the car flips over them, and he goes, "Oh!" And I have no idea how they did things like that in this movie.
Yeah.
Or why they did it. Like, it's not needed.
Well, no, you would think that it would just be so much safer to have his head inside the car, and that's what, as a character, he would be trying to do. But instead, he's got to have it out.
Yeah.
And he's got to be like, whoa. And
It's more dynamic.
I also think right after that is where they delivered the thesis dialogue lines of the film, which are, "This is some sick shit." And then it's like, "It's about to get sicker."
It's like, we know we're about to deliver a whole much to you. Whole much more.
Yeah.
I actually showed this to a friend recently, and they were like, "My eyes hurt." It was the funniest fucking thing ever.
Yeah, because I mean, like the style is like so much movement and so much color and so much like action in the frame, as well as the camera itself doing these really extreme movements all the time. And the next scene is again Joe Pantoliano, the captain, yelling at them, and he's yelling them about finesse and subtlety.
Yeah.
TNT.
Well, also, I love that they made him into this kind of like Buddhist guy where he's has all these incense.
Wuxia.
And he's like, remember your pressure points. Remember your pressure points. I just like how they took the cliched angry captain and just made it like everything that Bay does, just cranks it to 100.
Yeah. Well, and because he's able to go so extreme on the action, that when it comes back down to the comedy, it's so much more heightened because of the action that we've been watching.
Yeah.
That some of the jokes I found actually landed a little better, like the one.
There's also room to breathe. They're not always doing the bicker thing. It seems like there were actually like some written jokes in this rather than just like the improvised stuff that they were doing.
Well, yeah, and they're not posed to be like, you guys riff at each other.
Yes.
It's like you guys are actually a team a little bit more.
Yeah, like they have that scene where they it's a horrible scene in a way. Where they go to the stoner variety store guy and just start smashing up his shop ruthlessly, by the way, while dancing very enthusiastically. Yeah, it's yeah.
Well, I like that, and I also like when they're in the captain's office and they're looking at all of the destruction that they've done.
Oh yeah,
and it's
on
playing.
the tape,
it's
right?
on the TV
news.
in the background on the news, and they're like, "You guys, 23 cars and a boat on the freeway." and he's sitting there trying to stay calm about it.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, it wasn't just us. There was other institutions there too. The DEA was there." It's like, I don't see the DEA on the news, and he's pointing back at like the footage of Will Smith and Martin Lawrence like exploding shit on the bridge.
Yeah,
and he's just like, well, hold on a second, and they're just watching, they're just waiting for the cars to go by. And he's like, that one right there, that's DEA, and then it smashes into the boat and
explodes. Yeah. So, see, scenes like this are always weird for me because it's like Michael Bay is simultaneously aware of the destruction and then also just like, I guess it's just I'm aware, but I just don't give a fuck. That's really what it is. Because he's obviously aware of it. There's scenes on scenes. I mean, really, the whole premise of their character is that, right? That they're getting the job done. They're just doing it in a destructive way.
I think he recognizes that in a organized society, or we'll say in a sort of moral lens, that destruction of people is pretty bad, and that most people would think, hey, that's pretty bad. And the writers would probably put lines of dialogue being like, that's not great. Right. But he loves it, and the way that it looks so much that he can't help himself and just contradict that all the time.
All the time,
He can't help it. I go back to that story of him being a little child setting shit on fire and
getting in trouble
and being like, this is amazing. And the result is that he set a fire and they had to call the fire department and he got in trouble for it. But he was like, he didn't remember that part. He's like, wasn't that amazing? Didn't that look amazing?
But it looked great.
And that's just it, is he is now a grown man who treats real world destruction and even certain politics and stuff like he's looking at it like a child blowing up a train set.
Yeah,
and that's the funnel.
And he's never let that go.
No.
You know what? My respect is growing for the man.
And so every scene again,
He's just a 10-year-old with a dream.
It has to be directed with so much impact and so much like maximalism to it, with no sense or reason or character for why it has to be like that. He just needs it to feel big and wild, and it is frequently really beautiful, but it's also nonsense. And I say it affectionately.
Yes.
It's like some of the most. This movie overall is some of the most beautiful nonsense I've ever fucking seen.
Yep, 100%.
Just straight up. And
it's endless. Like this one, he really went. Like with the first one, it seems like he's setting you up for the big action sequence. This one is nonstop. Every 20 minutes, I think, another set piece starts, and it's just it never lets up.
Even some of the downtime is just as insane. Like I think about that scene where they pose as the rat poison guys, and they go into the mansion. And I love that the bad guy is going into his giant pile of money, and he's just firing shots at the rats on his money, and you can just see the monies exploding.
Yeah,
and
which is hilarious that it's like he's shooting at them because they're eating his money, and then he's destroying his money with the bullets to kill the rats.
Yeah, and
it's so weird. Like that would be such a fun villain character trait if it was like this was like a real quality feature film and not maximum Michael Bay. You know, like imagine like, oh, the villain has so much money, he's trying to save it by shooting at the things that are eating it. Like that's a funny quirk.
That is.
But the whole movie operates with that same mentality of like, why is this happening? I don't know, but we keep adding stuff on top of it.
Yeah,
we keep moving.
Even the guy says, "This is a really stupid fucking problem to have," right? Like I think he even says like that exact line. But there's also a bit so. They go into the dude's house posing as the guys who are the exterminators for the rats. But what they find is that they go into the bathtub where a guy has been dismembered and murdered.
Yeah. Which happens to actually be the club owner's partner.
Yes, and they've stuffed his body parts into a barrel, which they are going to take into the room as a sign of you're going to work as a negotiating tactic, we'll say. And meanwhile, Martin Lawrence is in the fucking basement, and I forget what I think they're just planting wires, right?
Yeah.
This is like, they're just sitting there trying to like catch this guy saying something incriminating. And there's this baffling scene that happens in here that blew my fucking mind. Where Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, they're cracking jokes. They're trying to pretend that they're rat exterminators. So they're cracking jokes about like on the job shit about how like, yeah, you know, you don't want these rats multiplying. Rats be fucking and shit, you know, rat. And Martin Lawrence goes into the basement where he sees two rats actually having sex, and the one they're doing it in the missionary position. Yeah. And he's like, these rats. The one rat's pile driving the other. These rats like fuck like us.
They suck like us. Which, by the way, I just want to throw it out there because I read your letterbox thing.
Yeah.
That final, you summed it up with the rats fuck like us. And I think that's a perfect line to represent this film for sure. You know what I mean? Like this whole
the grotesquerie of it, and like
exactly. I thought that even though it's played as a joke, when you put that into perspective, it makes it meaningful to me.
Yeah, I mean, it is I think accidentally meaningful that he is
going, a lot of it is that
he is going so full throttle into his own ideas on like what makes like America like tough and strong and cool, and also the repulsiveness that we have to push back, and the way that he captures it is just so accidentally revealing of like the things that he thinks and the things that he feels and the way that we process these images, that it is actually, I think, artistic.
Oh, 100%.
And that scene in particular really, really stood out to me. Even though the filmmaking and that, like, again, that's the downtime. That's in between the action.
Yeah, this is a complete like comedic scene, basically.
Yeah, like
you have Martin Lawrence like freaking out at the sight of the rats. Which, by the way, it's like this dude's the worst undercover guy ever. Like, holy shit, can't even keep his shit together when he sees the rat. I just find it funny because we always talk about like, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger or whatever. Martin Lawrence is a horrible undercover cop. He's always breaking character.
Yeah, he's really bad at it even when he's not high on ecstasy. Yeah, and he has to do it high on ecstasy.
That's
we'll see. Like it is supposed to be a comedy scene, but then we're like cutting back and forth between like a negotiation where a dude is in a barrel.
Yeah, very true.
And there's like a finger sitting in a kitchen filled with blood, not like sprinkled, like filled, like it's a room in Dexter.
Yeah. And it's a gag. Like he is using human bodies being dismembered as like a gag.
Yeah, even when like Will finds it, he does the whole like, y'all some sick motherfuckers, aren't you? Like they still throw it into a whole gag comedy thing.
Well, there's also that gag too where the Cuban villain shoots the one henchman in the head who let them in.
This was great.
And it splatters on the henchman's face behind him, and he's like, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah, and then the mom where he's like, what happened? He's like, he shot himself. Very sad.
Yeah,
very sad.
he shot
says
himself.
It so like nonchalant. His performance is fantastic. He's just like I said earlier, I guess he's wired. Like every time they have a close up of this guy's face, he's just sweating profusely.
Yeah, and that's
like,
Jordi Mola, I guess.
Seen him in a couple other things. I feel like he looks familiar.
His name, and he is from Catalonia, which I did not know.
Cool.
But I know I've seen him before because I'm pretty sure he's in Blow.
Yes, he is.
Johnny Depp and Penelope Cruz one.
Yeah, 100% is. Yep.
Yeah, so that's where I mostly recognized him from. I haven't seen him in anything else, I don't think, but I did like him.
Very good at playing cokeheads.
But it also helps that I've watched a lot of the Miami Vice television show, so he fits right into the Miami Vice television show.
100%.
But just done to that Bay extreme.
Yeah.
Which makes him just a lot of fun. And again, I think we're halfway through the movie now.
Yeah.
We kind of got to speed it up a little bit. But like, there's so much insanity that happens. I feel like we have to get to it. One shot I really loved. The 360-degree digitally stitched
I was
oneer.
just going to say, we need to talk about that right now.
Yeah, where, again...
what's sweet is like what he'll do is he'll go through a hole that's like established in the window already.
Yes.
But then Will Smith will shoot another hole and he'll go through that one.
Right.
And it's just
but also we know it's digitally
insane.
stitched because the camera obviously can't fit through that hole.
Right.
And he's connecting these shots, but he's connecting it. And the thing that's amazing about this is that normally the reason you would do a shot like this is to create a sense of geography, to like create a coherency.
Yeah.
Is the idea. Is you're like, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence are on this side of the wall, the criminals are on that side of the wall, and here in his action, in his camera, he is connecting them and he is showing you the space that they all are and where they are in relation to each other for an action scene.
Yeah.
But Will Smith is just fucking like triggering them. Like there's no coherency to the actual scene. It's just them being like, fuck me, fuck you.
Yeah.
No, fuck you.
Yeah, that's true.
Like there's like the
you
actual...
can tell that Will wants the gunfight, basically. Yes. Like there's not even a hint of trying to
Martin
de-escalate
Lawrence is
the
like,
situation.
De-escalate. And that's why this is the film where Mike Lowry finally gets like his claws into Martin Lawrence's character. Like he finally like lets him unleash the beast, you know?
Yeah. Right.
He just turns him into a complete psychopath by the end.
Yeah, because there's even that line where they like start shooting, and then Martin's like, "We should talk this out. We should talk to them." And then Will's like, "Oh, okay, go ahead." And then they start shooting again. So he's even using the situation that he created
as
to
evidence.
prove that Martin's wrong, even though he made the whole fucking thing pop off.
He's gaslighting him.
Yeah, exactly. This is deep character shit right here.
There you go. Well, at least there is some character in there.
Yeah.
In comparison. But yeah, this scene has some great moments, like Will Smith dropping both magazines and the two guns he's holding at the same time, and they smack each other in midair in slow motion.
Yeah.
There's also his use of the reflections and stuff like that.
That close up of like when it shows the gun through the wall, and then the guy, and then it just backs it. The back of his head.
Right, the guy
just
looks
comes
through
out.
the bullet hole, and then he sticks his gun in the eye hole, and then boom, shoots him right in the head there.
Yeah.
Yeah, like again, fighting through,
and the details
it's a
ridiculous.
clever action scene where like they have to fight through this wall, and it's so funny because it just leads to more destruction. Like you could tell he conceived the scene because he was just like, there's even more things they have to blow up and shoot through and hit each other with.
Another thing I find odd about the whole like Martin Will dynamic is at the end of that scene when they've killed everybody except for one guy, and Will Smith is like pointing the gun at his head and essentially just saying, "I'm going to kill you." Well, where Martin is talking to the dead bodies, going like, "Oh, hey, do you know where your boss is? Oh no, because you're dead." So he's trying to make like a point to Will that killing all these people, isn't the answer. But then at the same time, and this happens multiple times in the series, where he then turns it into, no, they were just playing good cop, bad cop to get information to the guy that's alive. But it's weird because Martin seems to genuinely believe these things. Yeah. But then he'll do a turn where it's like, no, I'm just playing good cop, bad cop to get more information. It's very weird. Like, it's like he can't quite decide what Martin wants to do with his character, No,
I would not say, again, this is Bay, not one known for coherence, which is why I think it's funny that his visual language in this scene is actually quite coherent and it's well filmed action. The visual. Exactly, but there's nothing actually coherent happening in his film. It's all like on a sense of a lot of the character, on a sense of a lot of the ideology of the film, on a sense of a lot of the things that it's trying to get across, the way that it uses certain images, it's so incoherent to the point where, but it's so beautiful at the same time. And I do like that bit where Martin Lawrence is like, he don't know nothing, his brains is under the table. And there's another part where from that, I think that's where they pull the porn footage of the criminals, which then they play in the TV store where all of the families and the kids are watching the porn footage.
And then they have that conversation.
It's the best.
About the, because he shot him in the ass earlier.
Yeah.
So he's just like, it's what you did to my ass. So
my ass still hurts from what you did to it the other night.
So Michael Bay, of course, has to have the gay joke and all.
He needs it in there.
And not only is it a subtle one-liner or whatever, it's a whole scene.
He has to extend
dedicated
the gay joke. It's like, wouldn't it be funny if these two guys were gay? That's the joke.
So awful. And Bay clearly has such disdain for the average person. I was talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, the American people are portrayed as good, but he gets these close-ups on these people's faces and they all just look horrible, and they're normal looking people, but even the kid is slathered in chocolate and saliva, and he's like, what's an erection? And it's just repulsive, and it's just a child. How do you make a child repulsive?
Speaking of that, they even have that scene with the drug dealer and his niece.
Yeah.
And they kind of make a fat joke about the kid.
Niece.
I was like, God damn. It's weird because I think the way that it's written, Bay thought that because he had the drug dealer stand up for his niece, that the movie wasn't making fun of her, but
it definitely
clearly
was.
is.
Yeah.
And it's, once again, just another kind of contradictory thing that Bay hasn't quite figured out yet, but it's still somehow entertaining.
No, I don't think he gets a lot of the time that his images communicate things and what he chooses to film communicates things. I don't think he thinks the characters say one thing and I just film them looking cool while they do it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, you're filmmaking.
Directing.
Yeah. Choosing to include scenes and choosing to include characters saying things is part of the process, man.
You know what? That's why this is the peak Michael Bay movie. He will never reach this level of Bayness ever again. He might genuinely have a better movie in his back pocket someday. I don't believe so. But I think the one thing that is absolutely coherent in this film is that it's just Michael Bay leaving a trail of wreckage, death, destruction, just straight up vile attitudes about humanity in every scene. That's the through line.
You two motherfuckers need Jesus.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
exactly. That's how he does.
What do you think? Because since I've watched Six Underground now, to me that's the movie that most represents this film. That I've seen from him since then.
For sure, yeah.
And I'm just curious, what do you think kind of differs? Why do you like this one more than Six Underground? Do you think almost Six Underground, he's too aware of what he's doing? Whereas this one is some of these accidents have created almost genius. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this one comes from a place of pure passion, in my opinion. Angry passion, because you've got to remember also, he's just coming off Pearl Harbor. He was like, I'm going to be a real filmmaker. And he gets reviled for it. So he's like, fine, fuck you. You want your fucking Michael Bay? I'll give you Michael Bay. Here's your fucking shit here, your blow-ups there, your bullets over here.
Hell yeah.
I also think it's the specific time period. I think that this coming out in the peak George Bush era of the United States is just this is such a perfect time capsule of the attitudes and the feelings of that time. that I don't know that I can say that as much about Six Underground at this point in time, because I feel like we're all over the place now with how much communication we have and everything. Whereas here I can trace this to stuff that I remember. 100%. And I'm watching this and like, my God, there's a scene here where they fucking, I don't want to get to it yet because it's kind of near the big finale, the Cuba stuff. But I think that if I was to just pull out the 20 to 30 minutes that they spend in Cuba, this would be a masterpiece. And it would be completely, like, it would almost be like a film that George Bush paid him to make, is what I would think about that last 30 minutes. But there's also scenes that get you the way there. Like, there's more great scenes that we haven't talked about, even like the body parts falling out of the cars and
or when they have to hide with the body parts and all that. Like,
it's so gross. Like, again, he's making it so intentionally disgusting, and like the corpse flying over the vans, them like running over it, the one that lands on the windshield, and he's like, that shit is nasty,
and he just keeps saying it too. He's like, that's nasty, that shit is nasty.
And in the shot he's framed the shot to include like the corpse's feet like sticking into the lens.
There's even a shot where, and it's totally unnecessary, the body hits the ground and then they zoom in on it and his head just flies off, like just flies off like 90 feet real fast too.
Yeah, I can't remember. Is there a line in this where some guy goes, "Oh, that's just unnecessary" or whatever?
I think
there is. I just can't remember where it is.
I can't either, but I'm almost certain I wrote that down.
It is probably in there somewhere. I'm sure every line of dialogue that's ever been said is in this film. Like, there's just too much to not be in there.
Great details. Martin Lawrence like pulling the Pepto-Bismol out and chugging it during the while they're raiding through the corpses for the ecstasy and stuff like that.
When he takes the ecstasy is just a very funny comedic scene. I mean, I gotta love the big fucking eyes, but a nice fucking fish.
There's also a subplot about like Will Smith sleeping with the sister and them not wanting to admit that part to each other.
It's also weird, like Martin Lawrence has this whole thing. She's an official DAA agent. She's trained. She knows what she's doing. And his whole thing is how just because it's his sister, he's like, you can't do your job. What are you doing? Like, I don't know. I just found it hilarious that.
Well, it's that old school.
It's the man protecting the woman.
Exactly.
Thing, right?
It's that really old school attitude about.
I just find it funny that she's like an established cop and he's still doing that. You know, usually they save it for like the daughter that's, I don't know, going out with
hasn't
the guy.
Figured shit out.
Yeah,
or
you know, and it's just funny that she's like an official undercover DAA agent.
And it's so funny because the other women in the film are the ones who get like all the upskirt shots, and like Will Smith is like a ladies' man, so like they're either sexual objects or like she's not good at her job, and they need to be protected, and they need to be what do they call that? The Madonna thing or whatever, where like she needs to be pure and protected. She can't be sleeping with Will Smith. That's a bad thing. That's terrible. And also, even in the corpses, he shows the breasts of the corpse. Yeah, and they're talking about how they're gonna go do the bimbo next or whatever.
Yeah,
it's like, dude.
Yeah, for real.
And like,
luckily,
even for this
they have
movie,
the bad
that
dudes
one's
say
like, that's a little much.
Yeah, it's like, but you know that Michael Bay doesn't think like that. You know, like I'd like to be able to say that it's because the bad guys call her the bimbo or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't think Michael Bay would have given a fuck either way.
No. And also, what's that? Big fucking eyes, nice fucking fish.
Nice fucking fish. And I love the close up. They have the camera in the fish bowl, so Martin Lawrence's eyes are just huge. And it's great knowing. And that dance move when he dances into the room, the snaps and the circle hands. That shit's one of the, like, for some reason,
Martin
that
Lawrence
move
is funny as hell,
has imprinted in me, like, comedy-wise. I think it's one of the funniest things I've seen.
Yeah, I'm just trying to smash through a couple of the other scenes before we get to the finale.
Get to the Cuba,
here. Yeah, the helicopters chasing them in the boat chase, and the helicopters going underneath the bridge. Oh, yeah. And it's all, like, candy-colored and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure, because that helicopter also almost hits that boat at one point, I'm pretty sure he ripped that from Gator.
Oh,
the swamp chase, where the helicopter in the swamp chase.
For sure.
Motherfucker's pulling from Burt Reynolds. There's a Stormare getting just like filled with squibs.
I love his line before
at the Scarface
when
house.
He's looking at the cops and he's just like, "I'm on your side," like because he's decided to kill the Cuba guy. So he's like, "I'm a cop now. Like I'm right with the good guys. I'm killing the drug dealer." That was a great line.
It's so funny because it's like, okay, well, his whole subplot was not important to anything overall.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? Like the movie's operating in not reality at this point. Why not just have him meet up with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence?
Like they even
fuck it.
Yeah, exactly. Like they even have the captain just like scolding them, and then I think like a scene later, he comes and gives them like a Navy SEAL to help them out.
Right. Yeah. This is one thing I was gonna point out, because that's pivoting us into the finale where the main villain kidnaps the sister, and that's where you get the big sweeping, which is it's the same shot they do from the first film, but it's just even bigger, and it seems it's on even a longer lens.
Shit just got real.
And shit just got real.
That's the moment. That's the Michael Bay moment.
That is the Michael Bay moment. Definitive.
And then they say, we ride together, we die together, bad boys for life. And they decide that
I get man chills. You know
they
what I mean?
decide that extrajudicially they are going to invade Cuba to get the sister back.
We have to mention, though, when they say that we ride together, we die together, bad boys for life, then all those cops that are like, fuck this system. And they start walking in like slow motion. There's a beam of light coming from the window.
Oh, it's so heroic.
They open it up, and the guy goes, like one of the most cliched but amazing, like manly man lines, where he's just like, I heard you guys are going to do something stupid. I'm in. Like that's classic action shit right there.
It's even better when you're watching them all head towards the room with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, and they're like crying, we're like, we're going to figure this out, man. Yeah. Another group of guys comes out from like a separate door from the meeting room just to meet up with the other group of guys going to meet up with them.
Yeah.
It's the shit.
It's so good. I was so pumped for the next 20 minutes after that.
Yeah. So they decide that they're going to go off the grid to Cuba, and they're going to do it with like some real psycho shit. Like they were like, dude, I got some contacts in the CIA. I got you some CIA guys. We're going to fucking do this.
We got SEALs. We got Marines.
And basically, Michael Bay decided that the last half hour of his movie was going to be an action war movie set piece where he relitigates the Bay of Pigs, but like in 2003. And so you're sitting here going, and you were like, yeah, during the Cold War, like Cuba and America had like some problems there, but like it was 2003, and like at this point, like they're gearing up for the war on terror. They're doing they're gearing up the Iraq War and stuff like that. And Michael Bay's just like, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna go relitigate an old thing, and we're gonna win it this time, because obviously the Bay of Pigs is one of the biggest like failed coup attempts by the CIA. We even saw it in The Irishman. They used it. It was Frank Sheeran delivers arms for it. Right. And he watches it fail on the TV, which is funny. And in this case, the final set piece, they got like the Apocalypse Now copters on the sunset. They got the guerrilla force. They are
huge Cuban mansion.
Exactly. It's fucking Scarface shit. They're hucking cats and iguanas onto the property to like fuck with the sensors and stuff. And the guy, they're drawing a painting of him as Jesus at the Last Supper inside of his house.
I love when he realizes that it's depressing because Jesus died after the Last Supper, like, and he didn't know that.
And here's the thing. So they pull out the bazookas. They start bazookaing the house. They're popping out of the coffins with rifles.
Out of the ground.
Are flying.
Literally, they come out of the ground at one point. Fucking amazing.
They're blowing up the house. They're blowing up everyone. They literally invade Cuba, who they're not even at war with or anything.
Right. And that's the thing. They even make a point to say that they do not have a warrant for this or anything, right?
No, earlier in the film, they literally say "fuck warrants."
Yeah, they're just
by the way, which was the attitude of the Iraq War, was we're not going to wait for anyone to actually grace us. We're just going to go fucking do it. Fuck that shit.
We don't need Congress.
Michael Bay's woke.
He's going nuts. And then I couldn't believe it when they blow up the Cuban house, and I was like, okay, they got the bad guy, or they blew up his shit, whatever.
Yeah,
they got
he's
the
probably
girl.
done.
Everything's fine.
Yeah,
they take the yellow Hummer, and they drive it through.
How I forgot about this scene is unbelievable to me.
The poor housing community, and they literally, it's 5 minutes of them ripping through housing, probably killing tens of hundreds, maybe even
of
just people, of children, of poor people
too.
in Cuba.
Yeah,
and they're ripping through it, and they're laughing about it. They're having a great time. In a giant yellow Hummer, and I couldn't think of a more American image than a massive yellow Hummer.
Yep.
Just pummeling Cuban
and
civilians.
The detail on them plowing through, you see every piece of sheet metal just
rip off, the sparks
just
fly
everywhere. And here's the thing too,
with explosions behind every single one they're crashing into.
Somehow. And what's crazy too is that at first he kind of paints it as like they're going through the drug section.
Yeah.
So at first you're like, you try to make an excuse in your brain where you're like, okay, well, he's just destroying the labs, like fine. But then at the end of the scene, they have villagers like shake their fists at the fucking Hummer. And I was so like, I couldn't believe what I just fucking watched. And they do it like it's like that kind of scene where like a fruit stand gets smashed and then the fruit owner goes like, you kids or whatever. Yeah. But instead, you just watched an entire poor community just be destroyed,
completely detonated by a fucking
and they're just like,
"You
destroyed my whole life."
Invading American forces.
Oh, you Americans!
It's unbelievable.
Those bad boys are at it again.
Yeah, I think I wrote about it in my review, but I think that like by accident, he has probably come up with like the most like incoherent and repulsively maximalist depiction of like American exceptionalism and imperialism like ever crafted.
Yeah.
And because of that,
I don't think I've seen anything like it.
It's probably one of the most honest ones because somehow like that, like the villagers shaking their fists is like how some people might actually think of America. But I don't think Bay put it in there because he wanted to do that.
No.
He just was like, that's the truth of that.
Yeah, that's his truth. Yeah, that's his social commentary.
And now we get to the real, because like even if that was it, great movie.
Oh yeah, easy.
Great movie. But
we aren't done yet.
No, we aren't done. They get to American soil and they're so psyched to be like, finally we're gonna get to the safe area, America. And I was like, well, it wasn't safe for any of those fucking houses. From you guys, so like they're being like, we're getting safe to American soil, and the American soil they're getting to, it's fucking Guantanamo Bay.
Oh yeah,
notorious for torturing fucking prisoners of war.
Yeah,
and at the time they were doing it. So I looked this up.
And this would have been a time that we didn't know about it, right?
No, we wouldn't have known
because this wouldn't have been public knowledge.
No,
yet.
there was a little bit of.
So it's so funny to watch this now.
There was reporting about it, but it wasn't like common knowledge like it is now. Like you say that name now, and people are like, "Oh, yeah, I heard about that." But at the time, people were only just like people thought Americans weren't capable of that kind of stuff at the time when this movie came out. But what's fascinating is that they get to the landmines out front of Guantanamo Bay. Martin Lawrence shoots the Cuban guy through the head in slow motion. You watch the bullet go in and out, blood everywhere. He falls backwards onto a mine and is liquefied all over Will Smith.
I love too how they like, because I think in some weird way, the iconography of the Last Supper before, and then having him get shot. It seems like he almost like he when he gets shot, they close up on his face and his reaction, and it almost looks like he's like exorcised, like something comes out like a soul, and then when he falls into the sand,
like Christ,
yeah, it's just like I don't know. I don't think Bay was trying to say anything with it, but the image is just
it's striking.
Yeah, it's striking, especially having that Last Supper thing before.
But watching him just explode all over Will Smith, it's totally disgusting. And Will Smith goes, "Yeah,
that's how you shoot.
That's how you do it, Martin Lawrence."
And we got to remember the entire like, if there is a narrative thread in this film, apart from Bay just being like, "Fuck everything into oblivion," it's that Will Smith has been like, "Martin Lawrence, you need to learn how to shoot better. You need to learn how to be a better man.
Yeah,
you need to be a better family man. You kill some motherfuckers." And here he's like, "You've done it. You've achieved enlightenment. You killed a man so hard he blew up."
In half, yeah, like, oh my god,
that's amazing. And okay, this is my favorite detail of it, because after that happens, Will Smith gets up, he goes over, and he makes out with the sister.
Yeah, and I came all the way to Cuba for this.
And as he makes out with her in profile, is fucking Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah.
And I looked this up. I kid you not. This was obviously the prison where we tortured people, and there was 23 suicide attempts in that prison the year that this movie came out. And Michael Bay is using it as a romantic backdrop while on the soundtrack for the third time in this movie, "Shake Your Tail Feather" by Nelly comes up. Probably one of the least romantic songs I've ever heard.
Yeah, for real.
And that's the song that plays as the romantic kiss shot happens in front of Guantanamo Bay. And I was like, and then that's the cut to credits.
Yeah, and I love the very last line is Martin having like some actual logic to him. He's like, "You guys gonna do that just around the landmines?" And then it fades. And you're like, that's chef's kiss right there, man. And then, of course, I mean, I do love, that is the ending, but I do love the little, like, the pool breaks again, and then they have a nice little, like, they sing Bad Boys wrong.
But it's so funny that like, light-hearted family moment
happens
could happen
after that.
Right after we just watched that. I was like, dude, here I am thinking
it's almost, it really
a
makes it work better.
massacred country of people and tortured people while they're fucking making out. And like, Bay doesn't understand that that's what these images mean. But he's gotten there to the point by so believing in, like, America that he doesn't register that that's what that means.
See it.
And it's fucking amazing. It's actual poetry. I think that the last 20, 30 minutes of this, like, as its own short film, I think it's a masterpiece.
100%.
I think that should be taught in schools as, like, defining American cinema. Honestly.
Yeah.
Oh, I completely agree with that.
I'm right there
100%.
with you,
but we've been going...
I think...
Oh,
go ahead.
Really quick, that there's a lot of discussion with film criticism about, like, you know, what determines a good movie, bad movie, subjectivity, objectivity. Like, at the end of the day, it's about what you feel about a movie, right? Because at the end of the day, I can't tell you whether or not Bad Boys 2 is actually any good, or if it's the worst film ever made. But I know it's one of the most films ever made.
Exactly.
And I think that's the important takeaway here. I get something out of it that I do not get from most movies.
No, this is
100%.
Like even if the guy himself, you know, maybe doesn't understand how or why, I think that this is art.
Yeah.
This is real artistry
on
display. He has created something that only could have come from his brain.
Right.
And I wish we got more of this than the fucking bland, stale blockbuster shit we get nowadays.
Well, absolutely. And it's like you said, it's like unintentional honesty.
Committee.
You know what I mean? Like it's just something that only Michael Bay could make by having the lacking of understanding of the system
it's
and
pure,
whatever.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's pure. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not someone like I get tired of seeing the social commentary. You know what I mean? This is just like kind of feeling it, even though it's completely accidental.
Someone hasn't thought it through, but they've so poorly thought it through. That it's actually sort of there.
Yeah, it's it's really crazy. This movie's amazing.
It is.
Oh yeah, it's a masterpiece.
Oh man.
Pivoting towards the reductive rating round on this watch, I am going for the whole 4, but it is the high 4 for me.
It's so close for me
because like front to back, this is just, I think, one of the most like odious, hateful, disgusting films I've ever seen, and so visually realized that it is compelling to the point where it's almost convincing. I can see how people watch this and don't even think about any of that stuff because Michael Bay.
I mean, I can say I didn't when I was a teenager.
He's really thought through the universe, and like again, I gotta like it is just one of the, I think, most beautiful and honest films ever made by probably a guy who believes some absolutely repulsive, disgusting things. And that I disagree with him on things or that he's not a smart person doesn't even occur to me when it comes to rating the film. The pure expression on display. Yeah. The fact that he was able
a lot of passion
to communicate that somehow through film in such a way that, you know, I was thoroughly entertained front to back. And I'll leave you guys with, I thought, a great quote that summarized this for me. This was by Letterboxd writer Sydney Taylor, and she wrote about this recently, about this film, saying, "There's a part of me that believes in hope, love, and the endless beauty of the universe, that marvels at the wonders humanity is able to create, and knows that despite everything, there is something in us worth saving. And there's a part of me that fucking hates everyone, that sometimes wants to throw my hands up in anger and defeat and sit down in my lawn chair and watch the world nuke itself. The only time that those two parts overlap and merge into one coherent thought is when I watch this movie.
That's well said.
And it feels like a perfect description of the two things that you're watching, because Michael Bay, in terms of craft, in terms of, you know, the way that he conceives of images, like there is something beautiful, something convincing happening there. And just what he thinks about the world, the way that he looks at the world, the repulsiveness of it, just this complete American odyssey of grotesquerie. I gotta say, like, it is one of the nastiest and best things that I've ever seen. And I'm struggling to almost come up with a reason why I don't give it the 5.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, me too.
But I am going to go with the 4 for now. But honestly, I could see myself returning back to this because I want to be convinced. I think that this is, if Bay has a masterpiece, this is probably it.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said. I especially enjoyed watching them in sequence, Bad Boys 1 and Bad Boys 2, just to see the, you know, watching Michael Bay form into Michael Bay. It was very fascinating. And I forgot just how it was lacking in the first Bad Boys. And then when I came to this one, within the first 20 minutes, he's put his stamp on it. You know what I mean? Like, and that was something that was, I guess, missing with the first one, where it was like, I see Bay, but I'm not feeling Bay, you know? So with this one, it was like within the first 10 minutes, he's already doing things that are so over the top, so ridiculous. The social commentary is like there, but completely accidental.
Yes.
And
that's why it works.
That's why it works so well, because of that, it's so honest.
He has accidentally critiqued America somehow by just so full-heartedly believing in it and all of its repulsiveness.
That's the thing.
And expressing it,
he's
like, honestly.
it by thinking that he's made this film, like, loving it.
Yes.
Like, passionately going, like, look how big and amazing we are. But then, without knowing, just saying
he's included the bad details of it, not thinking that they're bad details.
The rats fuck like us.
Yes. That's it. That's the defining line.
That's the defining line. So, I'm gonna give it a 4. But honestly, this could get there, man. This is such a wild ride. So, yeah, could get the 5.
Yeah, for you, Diego.
Yeah, no, it's the full 5.
Yeah, there
beautiful.
we go.
I really hate that you brought up the Sidney Taylor letterbox one, because that's like the best take on Bad Boys 2 ever.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, that post, that singular post, that's it. That's all you need for like analytical analysis of Bad Boys 2.
Bad Boys 2.
100%.
Yeah, it's terrific. But like, God, just what should you even say about something like this? It's just,
I know.
There should be a book written on it, like Tarkovsky's Voyage of Time, I believe that book is called, right? Someone should do that version of that book, but for Bad Boys 2 specifically.
Yes.
Because I think you could do it. I think you could totally do it. And it would be essential reading for me. It would join my library of books. It is like, the closest I can get to even like a Sidney Taylor post is like, it's like staring God in the eyes as they ejaculate fireworks on the American flag. Like, that's what Bad Boys 2 is like, basically.
Yep. Definitely.
Goddamn.
Has anyone heard Michael Bay talk about this film? Like, has he ever come out and said anything that maybe would hint that some of it was intentional? I know that Michael Bay does what Bay does.
I haven't looked into it myself, but I haven't seen it out there.
Yeah, I didn't know if he did like a lot of interviews or anything like that. But anyway.
He doesn't really talk about these. Like, he didn't direct Bad Boys 3, which is like...
He's not even a part of it. Yeah, I agree. It doesn't even look like he's a producer credit on it, which I was like, oh, okay. It just seems like if it's not going to have that magic, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one. The one thing I think's going for it is it's shot by the guy who shot Revenge.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah.
That's the cinematographer on the film.
Okay, well, it'll look great. That's for sure.
So I'm curious how it turns out, but I really don't think that it's going to have this Bad Boys 2 magic. That's for sure.
No, I don't think so.
Like, that it is pure Bay. And if you want to see some of this Bay magic, you can see some of it in Six Underground currently on Netflix.
Yeah, you can.
Which is what kind of inspired us to go back and
it was fun
and do this one, but. Yeah, I gotta say, it does feel like the specific time, the specific feeling, the specific place, like this could have only came out of directly at an America that was feeling wounded and, as Diego mentioned, needed to reaffirm itself after 9/11, and who was ramping up into doubling down on all of its worst collective tendencies of not waiting for proof or evidence, or not having any kind of manners, not having any empathy for people, not having any sense of human decency or care for bodily harm.
Yeah, like, no respect for the human body.
This movie could have only been crafted in that exact time period, and Michael Bay is the only one who I think isn't smart enough to not realize that that's what he was doing, but to so purely express those feelings.
Yeah.
And to be in a position to be able to render it expensively. It takes a lot of money to be able to make something like this. So I honestly think that this was just a perfect storm of the right guy at the right time with the the right ideas, and the right budget capabilities and the immaturity to do it. Again, it all comes back to a kid blowing up a train set.
Just a 10-year-old with a wild dream.
Exactly. And instead he comes back and he's like,
and he never grew up.
What if America blew a bunch of stuff up and I filmed that? It would be the same beautiful little childish thing that it always was for me.
Yeah.
But instead it's human corpses being destroyed, lives being destroyed.
Upskirt shots, you know.
Corpses' heads flying off. Beautiful. But anyway, I think that will wrap it up for this week. That was our ultra-long episode on Bad Boys.
Very normal episode.
And Bad Boys 2. Thanks so much, Diego, for bringing these films on with you.
Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. If you've got anything to plug, this is the place to do it.
Oh, yeah. The Waffle Press, my podcasts. It's on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes. And also, I'm on Patreon, too. So go check that out, where I have a lot more stuff coming out. I am doing a long retrospective series on the works of Adam Sandler and Steven Spielberg. It's called Happy Amblin.
Cool. Nice.
Where me and my co-host Matt Garingo are hopping back and forth between the filmographies of those two star powers, if you will. And we're going to wrap up with West Side Story and Uncut Gems back to back. So sweet. I'm very excited to get there. And this is not for me, but if anybody out there has the original Bad Boys 3 script that Joe Carnahan wrote, please, you guys have more listeners than I do. Let me know. I'm on Twitter at the Diego Crespo. Please, I'm dying to read that.
Also, let us know.
I would love to read
if you guys have any tips on getting that screenplay. I know a couple people who do find some of these screenplays. So that was how I got the Joker screenplay super early when someone said that to me. But that will wrap it up for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening. I think in 1 week's time, we are going to be back continuing our descent through a bit of the American crime movie, action movie id, but we're going to go back to the 80s and 90s a little bit, and we are going to finish off our discussion on the Death Wish franchise. 2 years ago, one of our first episodes was doing Death Wish 1, 2, and 3, and so for next week's episode for the Patreon listeners, we are going to be targeting specifically Death Wish 4 and 5, which includes Charles Bronson throwing a guy into a garment shredder. Which includes
with no emotion at all.
Throwing Michael Parks into a pit of open acid that's just in a clothing factory for some reason. We never really figured out why that was. But there's lots of awesome Bronson just murdering people because it's the right thing to do. And the fourth one, called The Crackdown, he takes the war on drugs on. So the Crackdown, so it's gotta be a pun. It's a pun.
It's gotta be a pun.
That's what we're doing on patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast next week. And then in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be back with a special guest for the free listeners. And we are going to be back talking children's sci-fi adventure films. Which is a bit of a pivot.
A little bit.
But we are going to be talking about The Last Starfighter and Tron.
Nice. I haven't seen Tron since I was like 8. So.
No, me neither. So I'm excited to talk about those, and it's going to continue a bit of a journey where we're going to pursue a little bit of sci-fi throughout the month of January and February there, because we realized we haven't done a whole lot of sci-fi on the show. Yeah. So we're going to take on a little bit more.
Definitely like to dive into more, for sure.
But anyway, that's what you can expect over the next 2 weeks. I think that'll wrap it up. Thanks, as always, for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy, y'all.